Well, I've been working on the gear shifter on my 2008 Passion smart car, 451. I've had several people say, man, I'd like to see some pictures or some video. So I'll do my best. I didn't set out to film anything, but I'm just going to try to make it easier for you. I've learned a lot. First of all, you got to take your console off. There's directions on the evolution.co.uk website on that. Anyways, not a lot of people get into the gear shift mechanism because I don't think any of the parts are actually available on their own. You just order the whole cluster. It's not too bad, but there's some certain things you got to follow when you're working. Now, once you get this all removed from the car, actually, let's just detail that quick. You've got all kinds of wires going into it. You got a cable going into it. So, on the front of the shifter, you're going to have your gear selection wire in here, indicator, so it'll show. That's the little thing that on the American, this is an American shifter. It shows park, reverse, neutral, drive indicator on the floor. That plugs in there. This goes to the TCU, or TCM, transmission control module. And then this piece here snaps up here on top like so, and there's a wire that goes down. That's part of the security system of the car. And the tumbler on this one is broken. But this is it right here. And there's a little spring-loaded indent. It's broke right there, but this piece up to here was hooked on here, and it spring-loads. It's in and out. And that actually snaps into this little protrudence right here. See that little hole? I'm not sure if that comes factory or if you have to drill that little hole, but you can push in on that little detent and that tumbler will pop out. And then what's down in there is basically like a real fat screwdriver blade, like a rectangular slot looking thing, and you can actually turn this with a screwdriver. You can feel first position, you can turn to the start position, it comes back and turn it off. And so anyways, you can get that out when you split the halves, but it's just nice to know if you ever want to change that stuff out, you can get in there yourself. Anyway, several things to cover, not necessarily going to be in order, but there's these little spring clips, which is this piece right here that snaps around this gear shift. Now I'm doing this one-handed, so bear with me. There's one here on the back. It goes right here. You pop that one off. There's one here behind the key. There's one here underneath the gear shift on the back. There's one underneath the front of the gear shift, which I'll show you how to get to it. And then you got one up here. So those got to come off to split the clamshell. Now on this also, there's this little yellow piece here, and there's some videos on YouTube for you pull that up and when you can pull it out of gear if it locks you out. That's because that's a mechanical lever that operates a solenoid. It looks like a doorbell solenoid that just fits right in here, and it's a little plunger deal, and it keeps you from moving the gear shift at inopportune times. And in fact, when I ran a code scan on my Smart, it said open circuit on N15.5 on the solenoid. So I opened it up and the solenoid was gone. I don't know if I left it out or someone did. Once I put it in, that removed my 3 bars of death. So anyways, there's certain combinations of having this pulled up as well as having the key turned on, as well as where that cable that goes, I think it's your park release cable or whatever it is, goes back to the car, fits in here. So if you're going to remove this from the car, if you can see, I'm out here in the sun, so it's really hard for me to see. Right there is a little Torx, it's like a T50 Torx bit, or a Torx slot. And see those two little red marks in there? Well, right now you see it's in the release position. You shove that cable goes up here. See if I get it in the sun. That cable goes up in there, in this. And it's got, I think it's like a ring on the end of it, and when you shove that cable up in there, then you have to turn that, those two red marks. There's a red mark on that white piece, and you line it up with that, and it's in the lock position. So to unlock it, you turn it that way, and it unlocks it. And then you can pull that cable out. Now the other critical thing is, while we're under here, let's show you the wires you got to pull off too. You got this ignition wire under here. So there's 4 harnesses. You got your ignition wires here, and then you've got this security system wire to remove, and then I covered the 2 wires up front. Then you got the cable that goes back here. It unlocks with that T50 bit. Now, in order to get this clip out under here, you have to pull up on that yellow piece to release the gear shift. See if I can do that here. About impossible. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, you got to pull up on that, but you also got to turn your ignition on. So let's do that. I'll take my screwdriver and turn it on. I'm going to pull up on this yellow piece and watch. There, I can shift it, and I can release this. Let's see if I can keep shifting. Yep, I pulled it all the way back. And then you can get to that clip under there. Now, sometimes when you go to shift it back up front, it won't go all the way. And this is real critical. When you go to shift this thing back up front when it's apart, where this cable went in here, this piece has to be shoved all the way up. So here's how you do it. Pull the gear shift all the way back. Make sure it's all the way back. You can even pull up on this yellow thing and release that while you're pulling back. Get it all the way back. Then you've got to shove this piece forward. Shove it all the way forward and hold it forward while you pull the gear shift up to the middle selection, or however far it'll go. That will engage the mechanism in here. That's the only way to do it. You can sit there, pound and beat on it. It will not go until you've pulled this all the way back. There's some US shifter. Shove that where that cable goes forwards. Pull gear shift up. Now it still's not going to shift into gear until you pull this up to release the solenoid. Of course, the solenoid's missing in this one. I had to rob it. You push that up, and then it'll shift into park. There's no other way around it. You got to do it in that order. Watch my video over and over until you figure it out. Okay, now when you split the clamshell to get inside, you'll be able to see all this in here. It's a little complicated, but really it was only scary until I learned what I needed to do. See these little clips here? You got two on this side, you got one on this side, and this is also that electronic module I showed you earlier where those wires plug in. Now, I like working from this side, and right directly underneath this clip and this one, down underneath here, there's two little slots, there and there. I can't really see because I'm looking in the viewfinder and it's sunny, but you can sit or slip a screwdriver in there and twist it, and it pops that loose. It'll be a little bit tougher on one that hasn't been opened before. That pops that free. So, I gotta tell you too, this is what gets a lot of people, and it got me. There's a torque screw in there. I think it's a T15. Get that out, because that's holding this whole thing together. So you remove all them clips, and you gotta get that torque screw out, and then you can do what I just did. So, I hope you watch the entire video several times over before you go tackle this, because none of this is in the right order. But I didn't see any other video on YouTube that details this, so maybe somebody will get sick of my poor video and make a better one themselves. I can only hope. Alright, so hang on here. I got to get the shifter pulled back. I just like to have it straight up and down when I pull the clamshell apart, because I can get this piece out of here easier. So hang on. Okay, straight up and down. So now, pop those things apart, and here's what's inside. Let me set the camera down, and I'll pop this thing apart. Okay, there we go. I broke it loose. Now we're going to pull this open, and here's what's inside. Here's that yellow piece that we've been pulling up. See how that works? Whoops, there we go. And the solenoid sits in there. It's just a rectangular box with wires, and it'll actually probably stay in this half, but this little piece here is a little ramp, and it grabs the little plunger, and it will actually pull it in the solenoid down from here. That's where the solenoid tip travels, and that's why when you try to push this forwards, you can see this, some of the mechanism working there. When you try to shift that forward with that solenoid sticking up here, it catches in here. So that's why you normally can't do that unless you manually override it so you can shift past it. Anyways, here is your ignition switch. It's got another little slot in it, and that piece I showed you earlier that we've been sticking the screwdriver in, it goes in there. is this. Now it will go in here one of two ways. It'll go like this, or you can spin it around. However, this slot goes to the front, always. So if you put it in with the slot to the back, it ain't going to work. But that's part of the mechanism. This piece here slips down in there, and then this little notch right here is where this piece fits, your ignition switch. And it kind of sits, if you see, it's kind of cockeyed. It's jutting up at an angle here. So don't try to put it in flat like that. It won't go back together. So we'll put this on there like that. And see, that is why, let me show you this. When you turn this, see how that little plastic disc moves? And that's why you can't pull it out of park when the ignition's off, because this piece here moves back and crashes into there. So when you turn it up to the first accessory position, now this piece will go right down through here and you'll be fine. So let's take that out for now. Okay, then this piece down here in the bottom, there's a spring-loaded plunger that rides in all that grease. And when you shift, this travels back and forth in here like that. See if I can get it to shift for you. Yeah, see that? And then that's also why when you pull it all the way back, now you can kick it over, and that's your manual mode. So anyways, we'll go ahead and set that out for the moment. That's what's inside there. And then this piece on the bottom has that little clip on the other side, and there's a little cutout in there, so you can take your screwdriver and twist it, and it just pops right out. See that? There we go. Alright, now this also will start to explain. Well, let's save that for the next part of the video. We'll lift this out, and then that lets you get this piece out, and then this little electronic box here, which works with little magnets, Hall effect sensor. You got to remove this little torque screw right here, and then this will eject right out on the side. So now when you put this all back together, you got to put your little sensor, you slide your electronic box in, put your torque screw in, you got to slide this piece in there, and then you got these two little grooves, and they line up with, if you can see right back here, see those two little nubs sticking out? They got to slide right over that. So let me aim the camera, and it slides over that like that. And of course you got to try and do all this. You've got this cone up here on the Gearshift, so it probably should come in like this at an angle. Doing this one-handed is just so tough. You kind of have to do it at an angle. I'm going to go ahead and use both hands, because you have to get this little pin that's on the other side lined up down in here, and then you got to also line this piece up in here, and that takes two hands, so hang on. You at least get to hear me fiddling around with it. Alright, that's exactly what I had to do. Well, just like what I told you, is I had to pull that Gearshift over that way and come in at an angle and get this put in first, and then as I laid that down, make sure that that piece lined up down in there. Alright, and then I suppose that piece should have went in first. Yeah, but I can do that quick here. Hang on. Alright. I just had to tip this up, and then I could slip this down underneath it, so I'm sorry about that. Anyways, the whole reason why I told you earlier that you got to pull the Gearshift all the way back, shove this in then pull the gear shift up, and then do that release, and then it'll go up front, is for this reason. See this piece right here? It has to line up with this groove. And when you push this forwards, it comes all the way up, and then that gear shifter's in there like that, and it will ride, that piece will ride right up in that groove. And when I get that bottom piece of plastic in, it'll line up. There we go. See how that lines like that? And what will happen is, if you pull this thing all the way back, it comes out of that groove, and then this piece here can slip back. So I'll go ahead and do that, pull it back. Now see what happens? Now your gear shift's all jammed up, because it's not lined up in the groove. So you push that all the way forwards, and then it can line up in that groove. See how that works? So then, this piece here, you can clean this out if you want. Put some fresh lithium grease, or there's there's printer greases out there that work on special lubricants that are engineered to lubricate plastic without causing the plastic to rot and decompose on you. So you can get a good view now. See how this has that one little indent on that side, and then there's two on this side. So we got to get that piece back up in there. And I'm probably not doing this in the right order, but what the heck. There, see, it just snapped in. So now, I think we're probably, yeah, we're in regular mode there. So we've got that. And so now we got to put our ignition components, our ignition switch back in. You don't have to put I don't like putting the tumbler in myself. I like to wait and install that afterwards. You just line everything up and you can shove it in, it'll lock itself in. And then you got to have your solenoid in here, and it plugs in right, get the strap out of the way, it plugs in right down there. There's a little, I don't know if it shows up on camera, I can't tell, a little 2-prong pin. And then the wires come up and they run through this slot right here under the solenoid, and then it just sits right in here. There's a little place where it just sits in, and a little plunger comes up here. So anyways, that's pretty much it, and when you have everything together, the plunger will be in the right place and everything will line up. It's just the tricky part. Let me move my camera strap here. Is getting this lined up. Now what I do is I get it tucked up underneath the gear shifter here, and then kind of go around it, look and make sure everything's lined up, and you should start seeing those little prongs in this window here, right there and there. And once you kind of feel like everything's lined up, you can just push down on it, pop it in. And you got a lot of stuff. You'll see up here it didn't go all the way. And so there it's back together. For the most part. There's probably something in there I didn't get right. Yeah, these are snapped in here. So now we'll check, see if our gear shift moves. There, something just wasn't lined up right. And so a lot of times just moving the gear shifter around while you're pounding on the halves will get it together. So, once again, pull the gear shift all the way back, shove in on where that cable goes, hold that in, pull the gear shift forwards. Then, when it won't go into part, pull that yellow piece up, and then you can shove it all the way forwards. You need to know this because now you got to put your torque screw back in here. You got to put those 5 clips back on all the way around. Double check that these little clips are all the way through and grabbing the clamshell. These two, the one on the other side. And then you can put this transducer, whatever it is, pound that back on there. And I think then you push the little indent in and slip your barrel down in there. And then you start hooking up wires and do what you do. So I know it's not the best video. I didn't tell everything in order and backtracked and whatever else, but it's something for you. Just kind of like if you were here at my house and I was walking you through it and telling you, maybe that'll help somebody out there get into their Gearshift module and feel more confident doing repairs on it. So have a good day, and enjoy driving your smart.